Hello people of the internet, welcome to episode 26 of Paint to Life, the YouTube channel where we take tiny plastic miniatures, throw some acrylic paint on them, and then breathe life in them with storytelling so that you might use them for your own campaign or learn something new on the subject. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, click the bell, all that jazz. If you're a returning visitor, welcome back. Tonight we're going to be painting the Storm Giant from Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures Wave 12. So, I'm GM Atank, let's get painting. Alright, last week we painted the giant spider with egg clutch and learned the story of Ariadne the Fertile. If you missed that episode, you can check it out there. Don't suggest you do it if you are afraid of spiders, as it is an arachnophobia's nightmare. Now, since part of tonight's story is taking place underwater, I actually have a new outfit that I will change into right now. The Nolzur's Marvelous Miniatures giant sculpts were what first got me into miniature painting in the first place, even before Paint to Life. First, I painted Big Chris. He was one of many hill giants sprawled all over the land, subjugating lesser creatures through brute force. Big Chris was a pain in the ass to paint, as I never felt that he got his skin just right, but those cuts and his arrows in his body are a fun touch. Next, I painted Lucinda. She's a stone giant. She carved and forged the greatest works of art deep in the mountain caves. Looking pretty extraterrestrial with that tall, narrow head, I added my own touch to Lucinda with a hemp rope belt around her waist. There was a small little gap. It looked perfect for such a thing. Then there was Fred, the frost giant, defending the giant's lands with the might of arms, not just on the chilly peaks and glaciers, but on every frontier. Compared to some of my other minis, Fred was pretty boring, but he was the one that my friends and family saw and said I should do something to showcase my painting, thus Paint to Life was born. Next was Jamie, whose gender was a hotly contested topic in our household. Not that it matters. But I clearly see a rack under that breastplate. It's a fire giant deep in the mantle of the earth where it forges awesome weapons and armor. Jamie was the first mini I painted using Milliput to make a custom base and try some OSR lighting effects. I was starting to get the hang of it. Thus finally were the Cloud Giants, who built immense floating cloud cities and served the Storm Giants as their right hands. My Cloud Giant was the second ever episode of Paint to Life. I documented my practice, got better at naming, with Skyelar, guardian of Skystommheim. So how excited was I to hear that in Wave 11 of the Nolzur's line they were releasing the Storm Giant, the final of the giants for my own ordering. So of course, I scooped it up and here we are. Storm Giants ruled all from both above and below. They held sway over the oceans from undersea fortresses, and they lorded over the land from floating castles in the sky. Storm Giants, known as Uvar Jotutin in their own language, are the most strong, large, intelligent, and have the most respect of all their giant kin across all the Forgotten Realms. They had vision that was adapted to see underwater as well as in air, as likewise their lungs could breathe both air and water. Their bodies were impervious to harm from lightning and thunder, even from that of a lightning breath of a blue dragon. They also were able to create and generate lightning bolts of their own, which they could then cast at distances of 500 feet, thus being responsible for sightings of horizontal lightning strikes high atop mountain peaks. The head of a Storm Giant's land or tribes was known as the Paramount. Also, in Storm Giant society, any form of mercy towards sentient being was seen as good, and luckily for the small folk of the realm, these giants were typically chaotic good in nature, and thus weren't necessarily the bane of many existences. But who is our Storm Giant? Tempus Invicta was a strong, formidable storm giant who loved to watch and learn about people and behaviors. He lived over 400 years, ruling over Skystommheim, and ensured both the kingdom and the surrounding areas were kept safe of things that didn't belong. He commanded a tribe of cloud giants who served him, as well held sway over all other giants in his dominion, should he need them would come to his beck and call. Times were good, and Tempus was a well-respected leader. Even those who disagreed with his laws or moralities could almost always feel like they made a compromise in their favor when they had a disagreement. One night when he was sleeping, a human assassin crept into his room and was about to deliver a fatal blow when suddenly in his dream he heard himself urging him to wake up and defend himself, which of course he did, dropping a bolt of lightning on this guy's ass, vaporizing him instantly. But the act made him nervous. How did he get here? Someone had to be helping him. So he left, departed on the ruse that he was investigating rumors of dragon activity, and he went to figure out what was going on. Months later, a young cloud giant named Skyelar emancipated herself from her family and went out to seek out Tempus Invicta. Interestingly, that is episode 2 of Paint to Life, which you can check out here if you never saw it. First, Tempus visited Vorskar, high atop a mountain peak that was his home. He was an evil cloud giant, but a keeper of lore and secrets, and one of the few people who knew the true location of Skystommheim. Vorskar pledged allegiance, but Tempus spotted something. He struck him down and brought ruin upon his house, and then departed. Skyelar knew she would need clues to set her on her track, so she as well visited Vorskar. When she arrived, she found his rotten corpse, paper scattered everywhere, ruins from lightning. She also noticed the same thing that Tempus noticed. It was a dragon helm. It was intricate and beautiful, made out of gold, certainly something that a cloud giant would want, but it was not made for a giant head. She also recognized the symbol on the back to be that of the cult of the dragon. Tempus left the mountaintop and flew down to the hills along the coast, to the temple where the cult of the dragon were. They were a not-so-secret society of cultists, and they had made an arrangement with stone giants in the hills, and they were paying them for authorization to work out of this area, and the hill giants nearby were also in on it, so they kind of had built-in bodyguards and protection for their illicit operation. When Tempus sat down with the leader of the cultists, a man named Ricardo Rees pledged his allegiance, said he had nothing to do with any of it or the helmet. However, Tempus spotted something else, and therefore struck him down and destroyed every single one of the cultists that was living in the temple. Then he departed, sliding into the water, then striding, then disappearing into the ocean. Months later, when Skyelar arrived at the same temple, it had been picked clean. Hill giants had taken all the dead for eating, and there was currently a pack of gnolls that was going through looking for any remaining valuables of answers. She demanded answers from them, and they listened. She was a cloud giant after all, but she was satisfied that the gnolls knew nothing, and she let them go about their way. However, that's when she spotted something. Littered amongst the garbage that no one wanted was a large conch shell. She picked it up, and there was a clan symbol on the back that she had not seen in a long time. She remembered from her schooling that this was the symbol of a mysterious oracle of the depths. So she traded her protection cloak to a gnoll shaman for some water-breathing potions, and dove into the surf and quickly picked up the tracks, unmistakable, of her large lord leading into the darkness. Now, the storm giant Ogmoth was a paramount of a very small realm deep in the dark oceanic depths. His subjects were very few, mostly limited to some aquatic animals, but he had an immensely important task. He had been tasked with guarding the Altar of Fate, an artifact of immense power left there by Savras the All-Seeing himself. That's the god of divination and fate. Any creature attuned to the altar would effectively be immortal, but be cursed with the ability to see anywhere, anywhen, but never able to leave more than 5 kilometers away from the altar itself. Tempus Invicta confronted the seer. He knew that Ogmoth had been in contact with the dragon cultists, directed them to Vorskar to get directions to Skystommheim, and by that means try to assassinate him. The only thing he didn't understand was why. Ogmoth, having been found out, explained simply that he was tired of guarding the our altar, and he had looked into the kingdoms of all the giants around the world, and that Skystommheim and Tempus Invicta's rule was the one he wanted. So he planned to have him killed, and then he would abandon his post and take over as ruler of Skystommheim. He didn't care anymore about his oath or vow to protect the altar. Tempus is disgusted with his selfishness and lack of care for his kin, and therefore sentences him to death. Ogmoth acknowledges this and makes a motion, and a massive shark attacks Tempus Invicta. The giant overwhelms the shark despite being injured, but doesn't kill it. He spares its life. With that, Ogmoth draws his weapon, and the two giants clash in an epic underwater battle that hears loud clangs of metal, thunder, and lightning for thousands of miles away underwater. Despite being younger and immortal, Ogmoth loses to the more experienced Tempus. Tempus realizes he cannot kill Ogmoth while Ogmoth is attuned to the altar. So Tempus incapacitates him, and then attempts to attune himself to the altar. However, mystical forces repulse him. They prohibit him because his soul is currently bound to the medallion he wears, which gives him control as leader of Skystommheim. Ogmoth keeps regenerating and keeps coming at Tempus, only to be put back down and laughing. "You will lose, it's only a matter of time," he laughs maniacally. Tempus Invicta takes all of his strength and swings his greatsword, literally chopping Ogmoth in 2 pieces. He then blasts both pieces with thunder and lightning before collapsing at the base of the altar, only to hear Ogmoth laughing as he begins to regenerate and recombobulate. Suddenly Skyelar emerges from behind a hill of coral. "My lord," she says, "as above, so below, I am your faithful servant." "You followed me?" he asks. "Yes, to make sure you are safe." "You have shown true wisdom and courage, young Jotun." He takes off his medal. "Congratulations, you are now the new ruler of Skystommheim," and throws it to her. He turns and grabs the altar and says, "I hereby pledge myself to guard this altar now and for all time." The altar glows white in response. Ogmoth's face drops as the regenerative magic that was restoring his body suddenly stops, and blood and fluids ooze into the water. Tempus turns, looks at the shark and says, "Sharky, eat," and points. The shark dives down onto Ogmoth and tears him into pieces. Tempus Invicta, then standing before the altar with Skyelar at his side, flips through and watches the actual moment when he is about to be attacked by the assassin asleep in his bed. He yells at himself to wake up, which he then does. He then goes back to the creation of Skystommheim millennia ago and orders, through the dreams of the lead builder, to inscribe the name of Skyelar on the backside of the brick that one day will be etched with his name as the active ruler. "Now go, return to our home and rule, my child," he says to Skyelar. "I will be here, always watching." Tempus Invicta, the unconquered storm. So that's it. What did you think of the story of Tempus Invicta, the unconquered storm? Here he is. Massive for the shelf. Now is a great time to pick up some brushes, paints, miniatures, and give miniature painting a try. You might like it. Some of the people who watch these videos absolutely do. So make sure you head on over to your friendly local gaming store, tell them Atank sent you, get everything you need, and send me emails at painttolife@gmail.com of what you've made. I'd love to look at them. I release new story videos on Saturdays, and the subsequent painting videos are also released if you want to follow along with what we did and my commentary on why I did what I did and chose to do what I do. So head to painttolife.com if you want to check out my Instagram page, and all of my content is there as well. Otherwise, that's all I have for tonight. So hope you're having a great day. I'm Atank. Wash your hands, people. The means to reach to Volskar. No!